Hey everyone, this is Sportsman Pariente. And after an interesting divisional playoff round, not quite as good as last year's slate of games, we are now down to the final four. 4 teams, 2 games, and at the end of tomorrow night, there will only be 2 teams left competing for the world title at Super Bowl 57 in Glendale, Arizona. So let's jump right into the swing of things and break down the matchups for Championship Sunday. And we'll start with the NFC Championship game, which will feature the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles, hosting the number 2 seed in the conference, the San Francisco 49ers. And boy, what a matchup this is going to be. We're talking maybe the 2 best offenses possibly in the NFL. For the 49ers, they have won 12 games in a row, all while being led by not their starting quarterback, not even their second string quarterback, but their third string quarterback in Brock Purdy, aka Mr. Irrelevant. And of course, the 49ers, besides that, have their abundance of goodies on offense, from Deebo Samuel, throw in a dash of George Kittle, a dash of Brandon Ayuk, a dash of Christian McCaffrey, and a dash of Elijah Mitchell. And you've got an offense that is very hard to stop for most NFL teams. Now, that being said, however, the final injury report came out, and Christian McCaffrey, who was limited in practice this week with a calf injury, he will play, but it is being reported that he might not be at 100%, so that could be something to keep an eye on. Elijah Mitchell is questionable as well with, I believe, an injury, so he might be limited also. So the 49ers running game, which is generally a strength for them, possibly could be impacted, and we'll have to see how that affects the 49ers game plan, because we saw last week when the 49ers can get the running game going, that opens things up for Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and so forth. And will Deebo Samuel be used in the running game if McCaffrey and or Mitchell can't go at 100%? That could be a very interesting subplot to this game. And of course, for the 49ers, more specifically Brock Purdy, in the history of the NFL, we've seen many things, but we have never seen a rookie quarterback play in the Super Bowl. It has never happened. So if the 49ers win tomorrow, Brock Purdy would be the first rookie quarterback to ever start in a Super Bowl. So the key is going to be in this game, besides obviously the running game. Brock Purdy will be facing maybe the toughest defense he's ever faced. Dallas is very good defensively, as we saw last week, but Philadelphia on defense with Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay, Maddox, etc. They are so difficult to break down, as we saw last week when they beat the Giants. When they can get pressure on the quarterback and when they can control the running game, they're very difficult to get points on. So Brock Purdy has to play very good last week. He cannot make any mistakes, no turnovers, because this Eagles defense can get after you. Darius Slay, etc., can really shut down someone like Deebo or Ayuk or even Kittle, depending on what the Philadelphia Eagles decide to do, whether they double team somebody or not. And this is going to come down to whether Brock Purdy can do what he's been doing so far in this winning streak. He hasn't, been throwing for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, all that. He just needs to control the clock, not make any mistakes, and make smart decisions. But if the 49ers can get their running game going, whether it's Deebo or McCaffrey or Mitchell, that will take a lot of pressure off Purdy because it opens up the offense for their other playmakers. But if the Eagles can control the running game, that's putting a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy to go into a hostile environment like Philadelphia and win. Now, on the Eagles' side, offensively, Jalen Hurts did answer some questions last week. He probably is not still at 100% from the shoulder injury he's been dealing with, but he did not make any turnovers last week. He threw the ball down the field pretty good last week. And the Eagles ran for almost 300 yards on the ground with Hurts, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott leading the charge. Much like the 49ers, when their offense gets going, they're virtually impossible to stop as well. So if you look at the 49ers defense, led, of course, by Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, all those goodies that they have on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's almost like a super team that the 49ers have. The key is going to be, can they control the running game, which the Giants were not able to do last week, as we saw. And, of course, a few weeks ago, the Eagles ran for almost 400 yards against the Packers. Can the 49ers limit Miles Sanders, Gainwell, Scott, and can they keep Jalen Hurts under control in the running game? Because if the Eagles can get their running game going, number one, they can bleed clock and keep the 49ers offense off the field. That's number one. Number two is that if the Niners are putting everything into stopping the running game, you open things up for A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and all the other things Philadelphia can do, led by Nick Sirianni, who's, as much as I can't stand him for several reasons, can't argue with the results that he's been producing on the field with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Of course, 5 years ago, the Eagles got to the Super Bowl and won. That year, they were led by Nick Foles, Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, and the person calling the plays for Philadelphia was Sirianni's mentor, Frank Reich, who actually, from what I understand yesterday, just got the head coaching job in Carolina. But going back to the game tomorrow, the Eagles, as we also know, are very aggressive when it comes to going for it on fourth downs and really kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do tomorrow against maybe the toughest defense they've faced this year. But as far as who I think is going to win this game, I just think the fact that the Eagles are really clicking on all cylinders in the running game, and defensively and the fact that they're much healthier than the 49ers are right now, because we don't know if McCaffrey and Mitchell will be at 100%. Debo, I heard, was limited at practice, but it looks like he'll play as well. And the 49ers are coming off a very tough win against Dallas last week. It wasn't their best performance. They were able to grind out Dallas in the fourth quarter, but a game like that, much like we saw last year when the 49ers went into Green Bay and won that incredible game 13-10, and then, of course, the following week in the championship game, they played well, but they kind of wore down at the end when Stafford and the Rams came back to beat them in the fourth quarter. And the fact that whenever Kyle Shanahan has a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter of a playoff game, his teams tend to lose those games most of the time. So, that being said, the Eagles, I think, are the fresher team, the healthier team, and I just think Brock Purdy in that hostile environment in Philadelphia, especially if McCaffrey and Mitchell are not at 100%, a lot of pressure is going to be on him, and against that defense, I think he's going to struggle. So my prediction is the Philadelphia Eagles will represent the NFC in Super Bowl 57. My prediction is Philadelphia 24, San Francisco 17. Now that brings us to the primetime game on Championship Sunday, and it's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. Same stadium, same teams. The Cincinnati Bengals will travel to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the biggest question mark in this game is going to be the health of Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain last week in the Chiefs' win over Jacksonville. And from what I saw in the injury report yesterday, it does appear that Mahomes was a full participant, and according to Andy Reid, he will start tomorrow against Cincinnati. But will he be at 100% is the ultimate question. And then yesterday in the injury report, Travis Kelce, while he practiced fully, was listed as questionable with a back injury. Now that's very important to note, because if Travis Kelce is not at 100%, or if he can go on Sunday, and the fact that Mahomes will most likely not be at 100% after the injury he was dealing with, that's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to beat a team in Cincinnati that just went into Buffalo in the snow and really outplayed what many people thought was one of the best teams in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills. That game was... I predicted the Bengals to win, but I did not expect them to really dominate the game the way that they did on the offensive side and even on the defensive side. So for the Chiefs, can they get good games from Mahomes and Kelce with their injuries? And can they get Pacheco and McKinnon going in both the passing game and in the running game? Because in order to beat the Cincinnati Bengals, especially on the defensive side, Mahomes has to utilize Kelce. He has to get, obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster involved, MVS to maybe stretch the field for some deep passes, etc. McCole Hardman, from what I understand, is questionable as well. It's not clear if he'll play after dealing with the abdominal injury he's been dealing with for the past several weeks. Kadarius Toney could have a very big impact as well. He might be the X factor in this game if they can get Toney going to take some pressure off Kelce, Juju, etc., to kind of open things up for the Chiefs in the passing game as well, because the Chiefs, when they get going on offense, like Philadelphia or San Francisco, they're very difficult to stop. But we saw last year against the Bengals, the Chiefs went up 21-3 through the first roughly 20 minutes, and it looked like, oh, here we go, Chiefs are going to blow them out of the building, they're going to the Super Bowl. And then at the end of the first half, the Chiefs had an opportunity to get more points, didn't take advantage of it. And then the Bengals made adjustments in the second half. Mahomes all of a sudden was flustered, making mistakes, throwing interceptions. And the Bengals came back and pulled off, at that point in time, in my opinion, one of the big upsets in recent NFL history, going into Arrowhead, falling down by almost 18 points and coming back to win. And of course, Cincinnati is led by Joe Burrow, who now has more road playoff wins than any Bengals quarterback in franchise history. And obviously, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd, Joe Mixon, Pirine. I mean, the Bengals offensively, as we saw last week against Buffalo, you can't really blitz Joe Burrow. With Joe Burrow, he can get the ball out of his hand in less than 3 seconds, which is really an issue for the Chiefs on the defensive side, because do you blitz the Bengals? Do you play man? Do you play zone? The Bills didn't really blitz a lot last week, and they got picked apart by the Bengals with short passes and with the intermediate game. Now, the Bengals are not going to have their offensive line healthy again, much like last week. I believe 2 of their O-line players will not go. That didn't matter last week when the Bengals ran for almost 100 yards on the ground with Mixon and with Pirine. So if the Bengals offensive line can play like they did last week and they can get Mixon and Pirine going on the ground, that just opens things up for Burrow to pick apart the Chiefs defensively, getting Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd, and Hayden Hurst involved. And you also limit Patrick Mahomes if you keep the Chiefs' offense off the field. And for the Bengals defensively, we saw what they did last year in the second half to the Chiefs. We just saw what they did a week ago in Buffalo, limiting the Bills to only 10 points. With the Bengals on the defensive side is they are very good at disguising blitzes where it looks like, oh, we'll just play man, and then all of a sudden, no, we're going to come with the blitz from either the left side or the right side with the cornerbacks. And that just really throws off the decision-making for a quarterback because you start thinking, okay, I have to get the ball out quicker. Should I go to this read? Or maybe I shouldn't because I don't know what their defensive lineup is for this play, so maybe I have to hesitate. The Chiefs are incredible at that, and it's going to take a big performance from Patrick Mahomes to try and overcome that. Mahomes has to play smart. He can't fall apart like he did last year in the second half of the championship game. He has to get the ball out relatively quickly. He can't hesitate. And the other issue is when the Bengals bring pressure, can Patrick Mahomes move around? He was really limited last week with his mobility. It does appear the injury is improving, but I don't think he'll be at 100%. So if he can't really move around in the pocket, number one, it takes away Mahomes' ability to run the ball and also to kind of improvise by moving around, which he's incredible at. And it makes the task even more difficult for the Chiefs to be able to control the clock and really generate points if Mahomes can't do the things that he normally can do. And really, in my opinion, if the Bengals can get Jamar Chase and Boyd going like they did last year, and if Mixon and Pirine can make plays on the ground and in the passing game, the way that Joe Burrow's playing right now, not making turnovers, getting the ball out quickly, it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs. Unless the Chiefs, led by Chris Jones, can get pressure on Burrow with the Bengals O-line being limited. If the Chiefs can get pressure on Burrow and kind of disrupt him, that might be the only way the Chiefs can get the win here. They have to find a way to make Burrow uncomfortable in the pocket. But if they can't do that, it's going to be very difficult for them. As far as my predictions for this game, last year I picked the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl and beat Cincinnati. I also picked the Bengals to lose to the Titans last year, and they proved me wrong both times. Last week I picked the Bengals to beat the Bills, and I was correct. And this year, unlike last year, I just think the way Cincinnati is playing right now, the fact that Mahomes and Kelsey, we don't know if they're 100%. The Bengals are playing with house money, and they're out to prove that they are the dominant team in the AFC. And I think they're going to go into Arrowhead tomorrow and get back to their second straight Super Bowl. So my prediction for this game is Cincinnati will win, and the final score will be Cincinnati 31, Chiefs 27. And just a reminder that in the 3 games Mahomes and Joe Burrow have played against each other, the Cincinnati Bengals are 3-0. Although all of those games have come down to 1 possession. But I think that trend will continue, and Joe Burrow will be 4-0 against Patrick Mahomes. So That's my breakdown of Championship Sunday. Please continue to subscribe to my channel. And for the teams playing tomorrow, may the odds be ever in your favor.